Hey, welcome back, everybody. Sure is nice to see you all here again, and a very hearty welcome to all our new subscribers. 35 in this last month. That's phenomenal for a small little channel like ours. So, this past week, I've been doing a lot of little jobs. Well, sort of. Most turned out to be monster marathons of frustration, but I pushed through them. Will all sort out themselves eventually. Most of these jobs were tedious, monotonous, boring, repetitive, so I've left most of that out just to make life a little easier. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's do this. So I'm up here in the wheelhouse, and if you'll notice, there's bundles and bundles of wires everywhere. I've been pulling my wire. Uh, that's what I do. It's my superpower. So I'm here with my ABYC approved color coding scheme, but I'm not following that because I don't have all the colors. I've been hoarding wire for years, marine wire for years, and I've got quite a collection, but I don't always have the right color. So everything's identified, they'll be tagged, there'll be a spreadsheet with each run and each color, conductor, size, yada yada yada. And following a very technical schematic. I made that up. Um, we originally designed the electrical system for this boat 20 years ago when I worked with Coast Guard, and I worked with a number of electrical engineers, and we went through it. I did most of the work, and they just pointed me in the right direction. But that was 20 years ago, and the technology has changed so much that, back then lithium iron phosphate batteries weren't even a thing. So here we are 20 years later, and it all has to be adjusted. So this system's going together on the fly. We're hooking up one piece of equipment at a time, and we'll test everything before we actually hook it to the batteries or plug it in shore power. And I have a few electrician friends who can come and help me with that. So let's carry on.
So it was quite by accident and kind of lucky that I found out while the tanks were out that the threads that were originally cut into my waste tanks were an NPT thread, which is a tapered thread, and the threads on the plastic fittings that have to go into the tank are an NPSC, which is a straight thread. So I had to go looking around for a tap that would allow me to recut the threads, and the only thing I could find locally were very, very expensive. So searching on eBay and Amazon, all those places, I lucked upon a used one from the US for $40. I thought this little job would take me 10 minutes, but I severely underestimated how tough this HDPE plastic is, combined with the fact that the bolsters that were spun welded onto the tanks were probably more than an inch thick themselves, and the tap really bit into it, and it was like tapping titanium. It never really occurred to me, although for years I've been tapping metal and using lubricants, that maybe a lubricant would help in this situation. So I eventually did. I got smarter. One other peculiarity of tapping plastic like this is it galls up in the ridges inside the tap, and that's pretty much seizes it up. So I had to back it out and clean them quite regularly. This gets a little monotonous for the next while, so I've sped it up, and if you want to skip ahead, there's chapters attached to the video that allow you to do that. I'm using an aerospace grade thread sealant, That was a tip from an old-timey marine engineer that told me about that many, many years ago. And luckily, I remembered it. The stuff is amazing. It works well. You can see the fittings are pretty tight going in, but all you really need is the proper application of force and a big friggin' wrench. I had to install these fittings while the tanks were outside of the boat due to a little design change that I made, and it turned out that it wouldn't be possible to put these fittings in when the tanks are in place. You'll see that this one goes in a lot easier once I started putting some lubricant on the tab. A little dab will do ya, but the bigger the gob, the better the job. The two fittings I put in the first tank, which you can see in the background, took a lot longer. I was trying to run the tap through without lubricant and trying to hold the tank at the same time. And it took me a while, but I figured out that if I used a couple of ratchet straps to hold the tank to the workbench, I didn't have to try and hold the tank and turn the tap at the same time, so I got smarter. The thread sealant is really goopy. It's sticky and gets everywhere. I had it on my hands for 3 days. So next up was just a little job of extending the wires from the lazarette blower that will run all the way to the helm console. I'm just going to use standard crimp connectors and heat shrink tubing, so there's nothing revolutionary or outstanding here. I apologize for the noise in the background. It was pretty warm in the shed that day, so I had the big exhaust fan on. It's kind of funny because I think it was 2 days ago I had heat on in the boat to try and get things warmed up, and now I've got fans going to try and keep things cold. Welcome to spring in Ontario. I'm using a proper marine grade shrink wrap connectors here, and the ratchet itself has 2 jaws in it that double crimps the connection as per ABYC specifications. The extra layer of shrink wrap I'm putting on here is just a little added protection. This connection will be in the lazarette and may experience high levels of moisture or even possibly getting wet. Always give your connections a good tug to make sure it's not going to come apart. What I'm doing here is cutting a hole in the helm console to put in a ATC style fuse block. The oscillating cutter tool is really sort of ideal for this kind of job, otherwise I'd have to drill holes and use a jigsaw. There's a few more holes that'll have to be cut in the helm console before Lori and I can take it all apart and put the cherry veneer on it. I wanted to put the fuse box where it was readily accessible, because anytime you blow a fuse, you really don't want to be crawling under a dash or into a cabinet or someplace to find the fuse that's gone. This fuse block holds 24 fuses and will be used only for the higher amperage DC loads that are probably more likely to blow a fuse. This is sort of the business end of the whole arrangement here. This will be an electrical cabinet, and this is where most of the wires will come to termination blocks so that they can be hooked to switches, etc. From the switches, the loads will go out to the various pieces of equipment around the boat. The two black boxes you see already attached to the board are MPPT solar controllers, and the one on the far side is also a battery charger. Our boat will have two separate DC systems, one for the windlass and the bow thruster in the forward part of the boat, and one for the house bank and the starting battery. We will have the ability to cross-connect the two systems, but only at charging amperages. As you've seen before, all the connections are heat shrink tinned marine rated connectors, and as you'll see here, I'm marking each line with a number that equates to what the circuit is for, where it goes, etc., the color of the conductor, yada yada yada. So pretty much from here forward, it's rinse and repeat a couple hundred times.
Well, folks, I figure that's about as much excitement as you can probably handle this week. I do apologize for not having any sanding in this week's episode, though. Sorry, not sorry. Anyhow, I'm going to continue to pull my wire. Now, no dirty jokes. I'm kind of sensitive that way. I do have to say the boat is in a terrible state. There's stuff everywhere. It's time for another major cleanup. Kicker is, where the hell do I put all this stuff? So kind of when you're doing a job there, you got to move it all back there, and then when you're doing a job there, you got to move it over there, kind of thing. It's what it is. But I think I might try doing a time-lapse thingy. If you think that's a good idea, let me know in the comments below, and we'll give it a shot. So to everyone that's looked in, all our regular viewers and our new subscribers, thank you very much for your patronage. Lori and I sure appreciate it, and from Lori and I, thank you again. Cheers. Now behave.